What would that mean if the United States were to just stop funding aid to Ukraine, assistance to Ukraine?
Yeah, Jim, in one word, it would be a disaster. And the reason it would be a disaster is that Ukraine is really dependent on the kind of aid that we're providing it. We are, in terms of sheer dollar numbers, the biggest donor to the Ukrainians in terms of GDP per capita. There are other countries like some of the Baltic states that are actually donating more than we are. But in terms of raw numbers, we are the biggest single donor to the Ukrainians. And we also have the weaponry. So from a military standpoint, what you're looking at, Jim, is a situation where all of the ammunition that gets to Ukraine, or at least a large portion of it, would be stopped in the pipeline at some point. They would not be getting Abrams tanks any more than what they already have. They wouldn't be getting the F-16s that they've asked for. They wouldn't be getting any of the HIMARS systems that they've gotten and that they would need to replace, some of the parts that would get worn out. So all of that would stop. And in essence, what you'd be seeing is the counteroffensive. If we think it's stalled now, it would really get stalled. And the risk would be that the Russians could then come in and mount their own counteroffensive, and the Ukrainians would have a lot less hardware to stop them with. And that is an extremely dangerous situation and would really reverse all of the gains that the Ukrainians have made so far.
And Colonel Layton, I mean, beyond that, just the mechanics of supporting the Ukrainians and arming them as they mount this counteroffensive, I guess what kind of statement would it send to the world if the United States were to all of a sudden pull the rug out from under the Ukrainians? And what message would be received in the Kremlin by Vladimir Putin? Because it sounds like from what you're saying is that maybe Vladimir Putin might see a bit of a green light here, an opening to ramp things up and see if he could crush the Ukrainians while he maybe had a window of opportunity if the United States is starting to go wobbly.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And, Jim, when the Kremlin looks at this, they are looking for any sign of weakness. And the kind of weaknesses that they'd be looking for would be a thing like a stopping in funding, a stopping in the supply line, whether it's due to funding or some operational issue. They are really focused on those kinds of things. And as far as the signal to the rest of the world is concerned, what you'd be dealing with there is also a signal of weakness, lack of resolve on the part of the United States. You kind of look at it in the lens perhaps from the 1970s and 1980s, compare what the United States, how the United States was perceived in the 1970s, in Europe and in the Soviet Union, and then how the United States was perceived in the 1980s. It was a world of difference. And it's that in essence, that peace through strength doctrine that becomes important. And in that, the corollary to that would be you have to supply the people that are doing your fighting for you. And in this particular case, the Ukrainians are definitely doing the fighting for us, because the Russians look at this as just one chapter in a war that they already say they're fighting with the West and especially with the United States.